All right, I got the ginger bun ready. This is my version of the man bun. And before I head out today to start working on the van, I'm going to talk about insurance for your van conversion because this was requested as a video. Granted, everyone's ride and what they buy is different. I'm just going to tell you what I pulled off and what worked for me. So I'm going to give you some tips on getting a really good deal on a new van, not used, I bought new. Tips on getting a new van, tips on financing it and insuring it, and then insuring your belongings in the van. But first, before we do anything, we need to have a moment of silence because one of the long-term, long-running van channels that I've watched fell victim this week to ClickButt. Clickbait with butt cheeks, ClickButt. And it is the deliberate and knowing use of your butt cheeks, your girlfriend's butt cheeks, your wife's butt cheeks. It's never the dude's butt cheeks. I know, I've looked. It is the deliberate use of those butt cheeks to get someone to click on a video. And it is characterized by the dissociation of the butt cheeks having anything to do with the topic of the video. So when the topic of the video is how I make money on the road, and then there's dead ass, that is ClickButt. When the topic of the video is about where you were traveling to and what you saw there, but the picture, the icon, is of butt cheeks, that is ClickButt. It is an epidemic on YouTube across the country. We have a heroin epidemic, we have an obesity epidemic, we have a consumer debt epidemic, and on YouTube, we have a ClickButt epidemic. It's everywhere. So we lost another channel to the ClickButt. It won't be happening on here, folks. Now sometimes, and ladies, I know y'all hear me, sometimes your butt cheeks just get out there by accident. Anyone who's ever swam in the ocean knows that a wave hits you and your bikini gets wrapped around your earlobes and boom, there's your butt. That's accidental. That is different. That is very different than ClickButt. And I think we've all just learned a whole lot. So moment of silence for them. Okay, we're done. Moving on to the more important stuff. Now, I have already done a video about why I bought the Promaster and why I didn't buy other versions of cargo vans. I'm not going to repeat all that. I'll put a link to that video below. But what I will tell you are my 2 tips for buying any vehicle, even if it's not a cargo van. And the first tip is try to buy at the end of the year, okay? When the new models are coming out, in this case 2019 models, the guys and gals at the dealership are trying to get the older year models off the lot, and plus their sales are closing out on December 31st, right? So they are motivated to move those vehicles, get the old inventory off the lot to make room for new stuff. If you show up in February or March and want a huge discount on that year's models, you're in for some pain. So I bought the Babe Bus at the very end of October, and it was a 2018 model, and they were trying to get rid of that. So we were in a really good place to make a deal. So try, if you can, if you're gonna buy if you're gonna buy new at a dealership, try to aim for the end of the year for that year's models. And my second tip is be inflexible. When you're buying a new vehicle, at least what I do, is I look at what it costs on the dealership and then I come up with my wish price. All right, and I always do out the door. Out the door is the term for what is the price of the vehicle plus taxes, plus tags, registration, When I'm out the door, what is the final price? Because fees and all kinds of other stuff can get added to your bill very, very quickly when buying a car. So let's say hypothetically that a new Promaster on the lot is going to cost $34,000, and I decide that my out the door price, my wish price, is $30,000. So what I did is you go to a bunch of dealerships and you're going to test drive a bunch of cars, and then you tell them what your price is out the door. You say, okay, I understand it's $34,000. My out the door, where my budget is $30,000. And they're going to tell you that you're insane and that they don't make these big margins and that they can't possibly do that. And so you just listen and thank them for their time and be very gracious because they are giving you their time. And they'll probably come back and say the best we can do is like, $32,500. And so then the trick here is to get your ass up out of that chair and then leave. Go. Thank them and then get up and leave. And you may have to do this a bunch of different times, but I promise you, if it's at the end of the year and they want to sell a car, you're going to get a phone call either later that day or in a couple days, and they'll say then, okay, well, the best we can do is $31,000. Stick to your price. Just keep communicating that. Now, if you come up a little bit and say, oh, can you do then they're going to call your bluff because you're bluffing. If that really is your price, and that's exactly what I did. I had a price. It was my budget. It was not some imaginary number. It had to be that number. And so I just stuck with it. And some people said no. And ultimately, somebody said yes. They wanted to sell the car. And I told them what out the door I was willing to pay. And they said no, 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 no. And then they finally said yes. And so I got the price that I wanted. But you have to stick your feet on the ground, in place, when you are communicating what your budget is, and if they're not going to meet it, you have to get up and leave. It's when you sit there and start haggling back and forth, that you kind of lose your mojo, okay? If they can't make a deal that day, just thank them, get up and leave. Somebody will be calling you. Okay, now once you come up with your number, the next thing that you're gonna have to do, unless you are paying cash for your vehicle, is to finance it. Now, if you are buying a brand new cargo van, you need to know now that it is a commercial vehicle. So when you're in the dealership and they're telling you about all their great interest rates and that your credit score is great, so you're going to get these great rates, well, that is for a passenger vehicle. So when I was in the first dealership, which was the Mercedes, and I was going to buy a Sprinter, and they're telling me all about, oh, it's going to be so low, da, 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 da. And it wasn't, okay? Because for a commercial vehicle, the interest rates are different. So before you even go to test drive cars, here's what I want you to do. I want you to call your credit card company, your bank, and if you are a member of a credit union, or you could be a member of a credit union, call them, tell them what kind of car you're looking at. So say, I'm looking at a Promaster 2500. What kind of interest rates can you offer me? At this point, now for a commercial vehicle, when I was told I was going to get these super low rates, after I'd given them a non-refundable deposit, the finance guy comes around the corner and says, oh, actually, it's a commercial vehicle, so your interest rate's going to be closer to 9%. They had to pick my jaw off the floor. 9%? Are you kidding me? I didn't know that. Now I know that. Now you know that. All right, so the interest rates are going to be higher, but you can get around that. If you take the time to call all those different options and tell them what you're doing, and they're probably going to give you an interest rate that's similar to that. For a commercial van of that size, 6 to 9% interest rate. So when you have come up with your price with the dealership and you all agree, and then they tell you your interest rate, what I want you to do is when you are sitting in that chair, get on the phone with the phone numbers of everyone you've already called and say, hey, I'm at the dealership, and they said that the best they can do is 7.5% interest. Can you beat that? Well, if people think that they're your only option, they're not going to compete for your business. So you need to wage a war of competition. So that's what I did. The dealership gave me their interest rate. I immediately got on the phone and I called the credit union. They gave me a lower interest rate. Then I called my credit card company. They gave me a lower interest rate until I finally got from up in the 7, 8s, and 9s. I got everybody down to 4.5% interest. Huge difference, huh? Huge difference, okay? And it was simply because they want the business, right? Everybody's trying to make a deal. At 4.5% interest, I felt like that was probably the lowest I was going to be able to get. And then Bank of America, who I've been a customer with since I could legally hold a credit card, they said, well, we'll give you a $150 gift card if you go with us. And I was like, sold. So that is who I got my commercial loan with commercial interest. At this point, I'll say real quick, Whether you have a commercial setup or an RV is going to depend on whether or not you bought the van already converted and they titled it as an RV, in which case this information is not really for you. There are other channels that deal with that when it's already considered an RV. My van, the Babe Bus, is a commercial vehicle with a commercial loan, and it is under my business because I still have a home base and because my business is video production and photography, and that's what the purpose of the van is. So I'm using it for work purposes. I live in Wilmington, North Carolina. Okay, so make sure that you understand the distinction. Commercial loans are very different than RV loans, and we, in this video, are talking about commercial, as though you are converting the van from scratch. Okay, let's move on. Commercial insurance, like commercial interest rates, is going to cost you more, and you may be in for a little bit of an upset when you start getting your quotes, which is why this stuff you may want to do before you go shopping, because all of this fits into the cost of a van. When I see these van videos that are like, they did the whole thing for $15,000, there's a lot of other costs that go into this, and the insurance is going to be a big one. I ultimately got my van's insurance through Nationwide, who I have my other vehicle insurance policy through, and who I had my the Babe Cave, my home insurance policy through. And usually, if you stick with one company, you can get discounts for having multiple policies. So that's what worked for me. So that's who I have a commercial vehicle insurance through. I also paid for the entire year in advance, which got me a savings of about $300. So way more money on the front end, but $300 savings over the long term. You can get RV insurance, but you will have to retitle your van conversion as an RV. And at least in the state of North Carolina, you would have to retitle it at the DMV, and there's specific things that the van would have to have. Then they retitle it as an RV. You can go get RV insurance, which is a lot cheaper. I will probably do that if I have the van next year. I'm not going to do it right now because I have already had so many hang-ups with getting on the road that I'm not doing that right now. Like, it's just, if you've ever been to the DMV, you understand, like, there is no fast line through the DMV. So, but it is an option. If you don't like these commercial numbers, you can go through the effort to retitle your van conversion as an RV and pay a lot less money for insurance and interest rates and all that other jazz. Okay, so that is to insure the actual van, but what about what's in it? Next. When insuring your personal belongings, the contents of the van, this part is really tricky if you are on the commercial side and not the RV side. If you have an RV policy, if your van was already converted and retitled and is considered an RV, you have some more options than I do. But with a commercial van, here's your options. Now, you can get a business policy, and my business policy, which would cover what's in the van, which isn't a whole lot, but I do have my business and my belongings in there. That would be about $300 for the premium for the entire year, but then it's a $500 deductible. So I'm looking at almost $1,000 of my money before I can claim anything on the business policy. And here's the thing, when you own computer equipment and camera equipment, that stuff depreciates really quickly, and you have to kind of update it and buy new gear anyway every couple years, just so that things sync up and that you're using the highest quality systems. So $1,000 right out the gate before I get any money back on insurance, I'm not so sure about that. The other option that I've seen people do is they use renter's insurance. I find that very risky, and here's why. I have had my personal car broken into in a well-lit spot. It was outside of a Little League game. They busted the window. There were people all over the place, grabbed my bags, and took off. When I called my renter's insurance and told them what happened, it's a personal belonging, and I'm sure that you've also heard that if it's in your car, they'll still cover it. They had so many outs on the fine print of that paperwork that they never paid me a penny for any of it. Plus, it was $1,000 deductible, same thing. So they got my gym bag and they got a bunch of other stuff, but I was nowhere near $1,000. If you're going to be traveling and far from the residency that the renter's insurance policy is tied to, I find that very risky to assume that if you call them from hundreds of miles away and say that your van RV was broken into and your stuff was stolen, that they are going to willingly insure that. It was not my experience with renter's insurance. And when I called some companies to ask about how the van and the house, and they were like, they weren't having it. And so I'm not going to give them several $100s if their reaction off the bat is, okay? Again, $1,000 deductible. All right, so business policy, renter's policy. The other option that I looked at is called an inland marine policy. Our boaters in the port city here are very familiar with them. It's kind of like a renter's insurance policy. I won't go into all the nuts and bolts of that. But it was the same thing. It was like $300 for the policy and then another $500. I think, yeah, the deductible was $500 to $600. So here's ultimately what I decided. You all know that I have a lot of friends in law enforcement, and so I called them and they pointed out that most vehicles, and this is true of 10 years of reading news reports, most vehicles are broken into at night, and at night I'll be in the van. So if they break into the van, getting my gear is the least of their worries. It's going to be me. And also, what most car burglars and vandals do is they walk down the street and they pull on the door latches, and they will go for those cars first because it's easy. It's a crime of opportunity. They'll pull on it. If it opens, they'll grab whatever they can, even if it's loose change, and take off. So your first line of defense is to lock the damn door, and you would be amazed. We've actually done stories where you walk the neighborhoods with the police and they just pull on the door and like half the doors are open. People just get lazy. So lock your doors. The second thing that my friends who are officers pointed out is that when a window is forcibly broken, it's typically when they see something through the window that is worth the time and risk to break in. In my van, you can't see a damn thing. I mean, after I built those blackout Reflectix screens for the back, and then I walled off behind the passenger and driver's seat, you can't see anything. So that would really be a huge risk. I'm not saying it's not ever going to happen. I'm not saying it won't happen to me. I'm not saying I might regret forgoing personal property insurance. But for the $1,000 deductible and for the fact that it's not the sexiest vehicle to break into because you can't see anything unless, you know, you're watching me as I get in and out of the van, I decided that I would self-insure, which is I set the value of what is in the van aside in a savings account, and I'm going to take a little risk and hope that nothing does get stolen. But in all of these options, in renters, in inland marine, and in a business policy, I would be $1,000 out of pocket no matter what before that kicked in. And you're still at the end of the day hoping that the insurance policy is going to cover anything anyway. And in some policies, if you read the fine print, they only cover the depreciated value of your gear. So that is what I'm gonna do, and I hope that I'm not shooting a video where I'm sobbing for losing all my things, but the goal is not to bring a whole lot to begin with. So I think that'll work out. All right, so we've gone through ClickButt, we've gone through how to get a deal, we've gone through insuring the deal, the interest rates on the deal, and then insuring your personal items in it. I hope that answers some of the questions that you all have asked about getting insurance and buying a commercial vehicle. If not, as you all know, I respond pretty quickly in the comment section. I'm going to do a separate video for health insurance for travelers. It took forever for me to find a policy that I could afford that would work anywhere in the country. But the first time I'm using that policy is in a couple days, and I'm not going to recommend it, refer it, or tell you how it works until I've actually used it. So that's coming up. And then I'm also going to do a video on safety in the van, because I have seen some bullshit on some of these van videos about how they're taking their own safety into their own hands. Yeah, so anyway, all right, well, I'm gonna go keep working on the van. I think the sheets just got here. I got a little beep that someone's at the back door, so I'm either going to have to manhandle somebody trying to breaking in via my security system, or it's the postman, one or the other. Someone's in for a treat when I open that door. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the comment section, and I will see you in the next video.